There is a strange pattern hiding beneath almost every fallen empire, every broken leader, and every man who slowly abandoned the life he once dreamed of. It wasn't always defeat that destroyed them. It wasn't poverty. It wasn't failure. And it wasn't even their enemies. More often than not, it was comfort. Not the kind that protects you from unnecessary suffering. The kind that quietly convinces you that you've already earned enough. Think about it. A man doesn't wake up one morning and decide to give up on his ambitions. He doesn't suddenly become average overnight. Instead, something much more dangerous happens. He becomes comfortable. One skipped workout becomes a week. 1 hour of entertainment becomes an entire evening. One excuse becomes a lifestyle. And before he realizes what's happening, the fire that once pushed him forward begins to disappear. The frightening part is this. Comfort never announces itself as a threat. It arrives dressed as a reward. It whispers, "You've worked hard. You deserve a break. You can start tomorrow." The human mind rarely questions these thoughts because they feel reasonable. That's exactly why they're dangerous. By the end of this video, you'll understand why some of history's strongest civilizations deliberately trained themselves to resist comfort, and why modern life has made that resistance harder than ever before. Because the greatest prison isn't built with steel, it's built with convenience. More than 2,000 years ago in ancient Sparta, boys weren't raised to chase comfort. They were raised to distrust it. From childhood, Spartan citizens were taught that luxury weakens judgment. Warm beds, rich food, easy living. These weren't considered signs of success. They were considered tests of character. Their leaders understood something modern society often forgets. A man who never practices discomfort eventually becomes controlled by it. The first cold night breaks him. The first setback discourages him. The first rejection sends him home. Sparta didn't become legendary because its people were stronger by birth. They became formidable because hardship became normal. Modern psychology would later discover something surprisingly similar. The brain adapts to whatever it experiences repeatedly. Repeated struggle builds resilience. Repeated comfort builds dependency. This principle appears everywhere. A difficult task completed today makes tomorrow's challenge feel smaller. But endless convenience has the opposite effect. The smallest inconvenience suddenly feels unbearable. Notice how often people become frustrated today. A slow internet connection, a delayed package, a phone battery below 20%. Tiny problems, massive emotional reactions. The world didn't become harder. Our tolerance became smaller. And that's exactly how comfort begins reshaping a man from the inside, not by attacking his strength,
by reducing his capacity to handle discomfort. During the early 20th century, American President Theodore Roosevelt warned about this exact danger. He called it the strenuous life. Roosevelt believed that nations and men grow through challenge, responsibility, and disciplined effort. According to him, an easy life produces weak character, while meaningful struggle creates confidence that cannot be purchased. History proved him right. Many of the world's greatest explorers, entrepreneurs, military leaders, and innovators shared one unexpected habit. They voluntarily chose difficult paths even after success, not because they enjoyed suffering, because they understood something deeper. Discomfort protects ambition. Comfort slowly dissolves it. This creates a paradox. Most people spend years chasing a life that removes every obstacle. Yet the moment obstacles disappear, growth often disappears with them. Success creates comfort. Comfort creates complacency. Complacency quietly destroys success. It's a cycle few people notice until years have already passed. Ask yourself one uncomfortable question. When was the last time you deliberately chose the harder option? When nobody was watching? Not because you had to. Because you wanted to become stronger. If that question feels difficult, you're beginning to understand the trap. And what modern neuroscience discovered next explains why escaping this trap is far more difficult than simple willpower. Because your greatest opponent isn't your schedule. It isn't your boss. It isn't your family. It's your own brain. And that's where the real battle begins. The greatest battle you'll ever fight doesn't happen in a boardroom. It doesn't happen in a gym, and it doesn't happen on a battlefield. It happens inside your own brain, long before smartphones, streaming platforms, and one-click shopping existed. The human brain evolved for a completely different world, a world where nothing valuable came easily. Food required effort, shelter required work, safety required awareness. Survival rewarded movement, not comfort. Every achievement demanded energy, patience, and persistence. That system shaped the human nervous system for thousands of years. But in just a few decades, the environment changed faster than evolution ever could. Today, your brain is surrounded by endless convenience. Entertainment arrives in seconds. Food appears with a single tap. Attention comes from social media. Pleasure is available 24 hours a day. The problem isn't technology itself. The problem is that your ancient brain still responds as if every reward is rare. It can't naturally distinguish between something earned and something instantly delivered. That's why convenience feels so irresistible. Researchers at Stanford University, including psychiatrist Dr. Anna Lemke, have explained that the brain constantly tries to maintain balance. Every intense reward creates an opposite reaction. A short burst of pleasure is often followed by lower motivation, reduced excitement, and a stronger desire for another reward. The cycle quietly repeats itself. One video becomes 5 minutes become an hour. One snack becomes an unhealthy habit. One excuse becomes tomorrow's excuse. Most people think they're making independent choices. In reality, many are simply responding to patterns their brain has practiced thousands of times. Habits become automatic long before we notice them. That's what makes comfort so dangerous. It doesn't ask for permission. It becomes routine. Behavioral psychologist Dr. Roy Baumeister, known for his research on self-control and decision-making, found that discipline isn't about being born stronger than everyone else. It's about consistently practicing choices that strengthen self-regulation. Every difficult decision becomes mental training. Every easy escape weakens that training. Imagine two men. The first avoids every challenge he possibly can. The second intentionally chooses small moments of discomfort, taking the stairs, finishing difficult work before entertainment, keeping promises to himself, training even when motivation disappears. After one day, they look exactly the same. After 1 year, they become completely different people. One has trained comfort. The other has trained discipline. The difference wasn't talent. It was repetition. History offers another remarkable example. During Ernest Shackleton's Antarctic expedition, conditions were almost impossible. His crew faced freezing temperatures, starvation, isolation, and months trapped in ice. Yet many survived because they learned something extraordinary. When hardship becomes expected, panic loses its power. Calm becomes an advantage. Modern life often teaches the opposite lesson. Avoid discomfort. Avoid boredom. Avoid waiting. Avoid silence. Fill every empty moment with stimulation. But every time we eliminate small discomforts, we unknowingly reduce our ability to handle larger ones. That's why many people feel mentally exhausted without doing physically demanding work. The body isn't necessarily weaker. The mind has simply become unfamiliar with resistance. Here's the irony. The comfort you're chasing isn't actually making life feel richer. It's making ordinary life feel less satisfying. The meal tastes less exciting. The conversation feels less interesting. The book becomes harder to finish. The goal no longer creates the same excitement it once did. People often blame their job, their city, their relationships, their circumstances. But sometimes the real problem is far more personal. Their mind has been conditioned to expect constant stimulation. Reality cannot compete with endless novelty. And when reality feels slower, people assume something is wrong with reality, instead of realizing what's changed is their own attention. This is where truly exceptional men separate themselves from everyone else. They don't wait for discomfort to appear. They create it voluntarily. Former Navy SEAL Commander Jocko Willink often speaks about embracing disciplined routines long before motivation arrives. Elite performers understand a principle that most people never learn. Discipline protects freedom. Comfort slowly takes it away. Every difficult conversation you avoid becomes future anxiety. Every responsibility you postpone becomes future pressure. Every easy decision quietly compounds into a harder life. The opposite is also true. Every disciplined choice compounds into confidence. Confidence becomes resilience. Resilience becomes leadership. And leadership begins with mastering yourself before trying to influence anyone else. Because the strongest men aren't those who never feel temptation. They're the ones who refuse to let temptation become their identity. But there's an even deeper psychological reason. Powerful people throughout history deliberately avoided excessive comfort. It has nothing to do with pain. It has everything to do with control. And once you understand that hidden principle, you'll never look at comfort the same way again. Power has never been only about money. It has never been only about armies. Real power begins with one simple question. Who controls your decisions? Most men immediately think of governments, employers, or society, but history repeatedly points to a different answer. The first man you must defeat is the one inside your own mind. Every civilization that endured for generations understood a principle modern culture rarely discusses. A person who cannot control his desires eventually becomes controlled by them. That control doesn't arrive with chains. It arrives with choices that seem harmless. A little more entertainment, a little more convenience, a little more delay. None of these decisions look dangerous on their own. Yet over months and years, they quietly reshape identity. Eventually, discipline begins to feel unnatural. Comfort becomes the default. And the mind starts defending the very habits that weakened it. The Roman emperor and Stoic philosopher Marcus Aurelius ruled one of history's greatest empires. Despite unimaginable wealth and authority, his private writings reveal something surprising. He constantly reminded himself not to become dependent on luxury, not because luxury was evil, but because dependence creates weakness. Marcus believed that if your peace depends on perfect conditions, then your peace doesn't belong to you. It belongs to your circumstances. Think about that. If your motivation disappears whenever life becomes uncomfortable, who is really in control? You or your environment? Strong men train themselves to remain steady when circumstances change. Weakness begins when emotions dictate every decision. Modern behavioral economics reaches a similar conclusion. Nobel Prize-winning psychologist Daniel Kahneman demonstrated that people naturally prefer immediate rewards over greater future rewards. Our brains are wired to choose what feels good now instead of what benefits us later. This tendency explains why discipline is so rare. The future is invisible. Comfort is immediate. One offers growth, the other offers relief. And relief almost always wins, unless it's challenged consciously. That's why the strongest individuals create systems instead of relying on motivation. They build routines, boundaries, standards, because they know emotions change, systems endure. Look closely at high performers across different fields. Olympic athletes, elite military units, successful entrepreneurs, world-class surgeons. Their daily lives share one common pattern. They repeatedly choose preparation over comfort. They wake up before they feel ready. They practice after enthusiasm disappears. They continue after ordinary people stop. To outsiders, this looks like extraordinary discipline. To them, it's simply identity. They don't negotiate with temporary feelings. They follow principles. Now ask yourself another question. How many of your daily decisions are made intentionally, and how many are simply reactions? Reaching for your phone the moment you wake up, checking notifications every few minutes, avoiding difficult conversations, postponing important work. None of these habits happen. because someone forced you. They happen because repetition quietly became identity. This is the hidden danger of comfort. It doesn't merely change behavior, it changes self-image. You stop seeing yourself as someone capable of hardship, and once identity changes, behavior follows automatically. The psychologist Dr. Angela Duckworth, known for her work on grit and perseverance, found that long-term success depends less on talent and more on sustained commitment. The people who achieve extraordinary results aren't necessarily the smartest. They're the ones willing to continue when progress feels invisible. That ability cannot be developed inside constant comfort. It is forged through repeated encounters with difficulty. Every challenge becomes evidence. Evidence becomes confidence. Confidence becomes character, and character becomes destiny. Perhaps that's why the greatest danger isn't failure. Failure teaches, pain teaches, loss teaches. Comfort rarely teaches anything. It simply whispers, "Stay here. You're doing enough. Tomorrow will be fine." Those whispers sound harmless, until one day you realize years have passed, and the man you wanted to become still exists only in your imagination. The final truth is even more unsettling, because comfort doesn't only weaken ambition. It quietly convinces you that comfort itself is success.
And once that illusion takes hold, a man no longer needs to be defeated. He defeats himself. In the final part, we'll uncover how truly powerful men throughout history protected themselves from this invisible trap, and the daily practices that kept their minds sharp, disciplined, and impossible to control. Every generation believes it has discovered a new enemy. Some fear economic collapse. Others fear political instability. Others blame technology. But history suggests something different. The greatest threat to a man's future is rarely outside him. It is the gradual surrender of his standards. No battle trumpet announces this defeat. No warning appears. One compromise becomes another. One delayed promise becomes a habit. One comfortable choice becomes a comfortable identity. And eventually a man wakes up living a life he never intended to build. The frightening part is that it feels normal. That's why comfort is so powerful. It doesn't attack your strength. It slowly convinces you that strength is no longer necessary. History tells us that civilizations don't remain influential because they avoid difficulty. They remain influential because enough people continue choosing responsibility over convenience. The same principle applies to individuals. A man becomes dependable when he keeps his word. He becomes respected when his actions remain consistent. He becomes influential when others know he can be trusted under pressure. None of those qualities are created inside comfort. They are built through repeated acts of discipline. Every early morning, every difficult conversation, every promise kept when nobody is watching. Character is never formed in a single dramatic moment. It is formed in ordinary decisions repeated for years. Ask yourself one final question. If everything that makes life easy disappeared tomorrow, would your habits survive? Would your focus remain? Would your discipline still exist? Or have your routines become dependent on perfect conditions? The answer to that question reveals far more than your current level of success. It reveals your future, because success isn't protected by comfort. It is protected by character. The psychologist Dr. Carol Dweck spent decades studying the difference between people who stagnate and people who continue growing. Her research on the growth mindset points to a simple truth. Those who see challenge as an opportunity keep developing. Those who seek constant comfort stop evolving. Growth always demands uncertainty. It demands effort. It demands the willingness to be uncomfortable long enough to become someone new. The world rewards that mindset far more than temporary talent. Think about the men history still remembers. Explorers who crossed oceans without guarantees. Scientists who spent years solving impossible problems. Entrepreneurs who risked everything to build something meaningful.
Leaders who stood firm when surrender would have been easier. Their lives were different. Their backgrounds were different. But they shared one invisible habit. They refused to let comfort make their decisions. That doesn't mean rejecting every pleasure. It means refusing to become dependent on it. Because the moment comfort becomes a necessity, freedom quietly disappears. Real freedom begins when you can choose discipline, even when comfort is available. So tomorrow morning the choice won't arrive with dramatic music. It will arrive quietly. When the alarm rings, when the difficult task waits, when distraction is only one tap away. Those ordinary moments shape extraordinary lives. Not once, but every single day. The strongest men aren't fearless. They aren't perfect. They simply make one decision more often than everyone else. They choose what is right over what is easy. Again, and again, and again. One day those choices become habits. Those habits become character. That character becomes legacy. Remember this, comfort is a wonderful servant, but it is a terrible master. The world will always offer you the easier road. The question is whether you're still willing to walk the harder one, because in the end, your future won't be determined by the comfort you collected. It will be determined by the discipline you refuse to surrender. If today's message challenged the way you think, don't let it become another video you forget by tomorrow. Choose one difficult thing. Do it today, then repeat it tomorrow. That's how strong men are built. Not in comfort, but in the decisions comfort could never make for them.